Okay, here's everything we learned about Marathon on the April 12th gameplay reveal event. Firstly, most importantly, we learned that Marathon will release on September 23rd of this year, 11/23/2025. It's a cool Fibonacci-style date, and Bungie has a track record of enjoying numerology, but we'll have to wait and see if that matters at all. Maybe more importantly, we also got a date for the closed alpha starting on April 23rd, just like a week and a half after the event. They posted the signups would be managed through their Discord, which humorously made every channel on the Discord completely unusable for a few hours. There were 2 gameplay trailers for this event, the second of which was packed with exposition. Set on the planet of Tau Ceti, Marathon will be a classic PvPvE extraction shooter with teams of 3 unless players choose to opt out of team fill and go it alone or as a duo. Total player count on the server will depend on the map, but the Dire Marsh map the alpha will launch with is built for 18 players total, or 6 teams of 3, and the way they talk about this made it seem to me that this would be the normal map size for Marathon. Bungie refers to a round of Marathon gameplay as a run, and each run will have a time limit for players to find loot and extract with it. While that time limit was never formally stated, in this clip of a player loading in, you can see a clock counting down to 25 minutes, with the player not yet moving, leading me to believe that 25 minutes will be the standard run length. Extracting lets you end a run with all the loot you manage to scavenge. In the tragic event of your death, anything on your person will drop and be lootable by other players. Just like with classic extraction shooters, before every run, you will be able to choose a loadout from the gear you have looted so far in your time playing. Unlike other extraction shooters, you will also choose a runner, a character with unique abilities and passives. Bungie plans to launch Marathon with 6 runners, but the alpha on the 23rd will have 4. Locust, Blackbird, Glitch, and Void. Locust is your entry fragging soldier build, featuring a front-facing shield and a super sprint. Blackbird is a reconnaissance specialist with abilities focused on locating players and punishing bad positioning. Being the reconnaissance runner, I have to assume Blackbird's name is a tribute to the SR-71 Blackbird, the craziest spy plane of all time. It's a pretty cool reference. Glitch is described as a disruptor kit, and other than brief mentions of an ability that knocks players out of position, Glitch was the least discussed of the runners. To be honest, when they first showed the characters, I thought Glitch was going to be like a speed-focused character, with Locust being kind of this like all-rounder, like, you know, good at everything but not great at anything. But then they talked about Locust being kind of the W key character with a super sprint, which leads me now to think Glitch is maybe not so movement-focused and maybe disrupts in other ways. Lastly, Void is the stealth runner featuring abilities to cloak and deploy smokes. Notably, teams are not limited in the number of single runners they can have. You and your friends could run 3 Blackbirds if you want, and this created some immersion confusion for me. More on that later. One of the biggest question marks around Marathon ever since the game was announced has been, how sweaty is this game going to be? Extraction shooters as a genre have their roots in military simulator games, notoriously the most intense and least intuitive games to get into, and that has kept the genre from ever having a mainstream title. So how is Bungie going to bridge the gap between their current fan base of Halo and Destiny gamers, many of whom are casual weekend console gamers, and the genre's audience of hardcore milsim gamers? During the event, Bungie was fielding questions from Twitch chat, and this exact question got brought up and addressed. Game director Joe Ziegler said Marathon would feature a robust tutorial, something most games in the genre don't have, and gameplay director Andrew Witz talked about the game's design philosophy. Marathon won't have realism features such as a limb system where being shot in the leg has different consequences than being shot in the chest, but it will have different damage and effect types, with different weapons applying different status effects to players. At one point, grenades were brought up, and the entire dev team on the panel got excited about just how many different types of grenades there are, though they didn't tell us about any of them. This to me communicates that while Bungie isn't interested in making the game have a whole bunch of different deep systems that the players have to learn, they want the systems that are in place, like damage types, to have a lot of complexity and to reward players who take the time to really learn those systems. Witz multiple times mentioned that the design philosophy revolved around every payoff coming at a cost, so it's clear that the team is doing their best to make the game challenging, but without the tedium of an intricate injury and first aid system or the insane list of key bindings so common in extraction shooters. There are a number of mechanics I observed while watching the event, just in the gameplay footage, that I think will help you decide if Marathon is the right level of hardcore for you. First off, at no point was there any sort of insurance system described. They really made it sound like if you died on a run, you lost everything. And even games like Tarkov have some system in place where you get to keep some of your gear if you can kind of achieve some mid-game checkpoint. Secondly, bags take time to search through. This is one element of milsim realism that the devs chose to keep, so I'd be surprised if it's the last. Marathon isn't departing entirely from its genre roots. Last and probably least, the game does feature fall damage, which is not a big thing. Until it is. On the flip side, guns have hit markers and kill markers when successfully shooting enemies. Long-range scopes have that classic glare to alert potential targets of impending doom. Borrowing a classic battle royale mechanic, players are downed after taking full damage and must have extra damage dealt to them to be fully eliminated. Surprisingly though, fully eliminated players can be revived on the spot without the need to rendezvous to some sort of spawn beacon. Obviously, depending on where your teammates died, this could be a good or a bad thing, but in general, being able to bring back a fully eliminated teammate on top of their gear, directly on top of their gear, it's a very generous style of rezzing, and I think it caters to new players well. Lastly, if you're truly out of gear, you have the opportunity to be sponsored by factions and provided with a loadout to help you get back on your feet. Factions were talked about but never really shown during the event. This footage is from Dr. Lupo's Impressions video. The lore of the game is that we the runners are mercenaries being hired by factions to loot the ruins of a lost civilization, so taking contracts from factions is the primary side quest of the game. Some of these contracts are notably completable without having to extract, such as scanning a portion of the map for architecture or something. That's something you can do without having to extract from the game, which means there's ways to build up your bank without having to successfully eliminate a team of fully geared players. The devs didn't talk a lot about the economy, but they did mention a black market where you can sell and buy gear, so it sounds like there are ways to sell the loot you don't want to get the loot you do. Speaking of loot, a huge part of extraction shooters is the gear system, and we got lots of details about it. In addition to fully moddable guns with multi-stage scopes, and Andrew Witt's saying
weapons are going to do more than just shoot, obviously. It's a Bungie game, we gotta like really push things.
The runners themselves are moddable with implants and cores. Cores sounded particularly interesting to me because they add passives to your runner, with the highest end cores being runner specific and reshaping their innate abilities. One aspect that got mentioned multiple times was the runner's stamina system, Bungie's framing as heat. I really like this twist on the stamina or power resource mechanic, especially for lore reasons. You are a machine here, and anyone knows a machine doesn't get tired, a machine overheats. So there's cool lore reasons, but then there's also the fun gameplay mechanic of it here, that instead of spending a resource like stamina or power, you're actually building up a bar that is basically a debuff and has some really intuitive tie-ins to other mechanics. Like if a character had a thermal radar or a thermal scope, it would stand to reason that a runner who has built up a lot of heat would be extra visible on that sensor. So Locust building up heat as they're super sprinting at an enemy team. If that team's equipped with a thermal radar, Locust is going to be losing the element of surprise instead of gaining it. I hope they implement something like this. It'd be kind of cool. There wasn't anything about thermal radars. I just think that'd be a fun idea. The other devs on the stage, Joe Cross, the franchise art director, and Lars Dokken, the senior design lead, got to talk about building the world of Marathon and the environments players would get to explore. The PvE elements of the game are robust. In addition to the UESC, a suffocating corporate force of robots, the map will also feature flora and fauna, some of which are definitely hostile, like these ticks, these red floating bomb creatures that explode when you get too close. Maps will sport a range of weather conditions and dynamic events, and on a macro scale, Bungie has stated that there will be community challenges and seasonal events to keep players returning to Tau Ceti. The last two pieces of content we were given was a 20-minute demo of creators playing the alpha, as well as a brilliant lore cinematic. With the gameplay demo, I was surprised by the density of the action. Part of the unique vibe of extraction shooters to me has always been the stark and eerie silence between encounters. The maps are usually huge, and moving between points of interest takes full minutes at times, and that walking is stressful as you never know who's watching you and when enemy fire might start to whiz overhead. That's part of an extraction shooter to me. There was none of that in this gameplay. The gamers seem to be perpetually fighting mobs or players, oftentimes both. Now, there totally is a chance that the calmer parts of the gameplay were edited out for the sake of entertainment, and that the map is actually much larger than this gameplay demo made it feel. we'll just have to wait for more gameplay to see and find out. One thing I should have expected, but was surprised to see, was the first glimpse at an energy-style weapon. Very reminiscent of a Halo plasma rifle with long bullet travel time. This sort of gun makes perfect sense for Bungie to put in their sci-fi shooter game, but I just hadn't really thought about it because most extraction shooters are real-world guns only, so kind of refreshing. Excited to see how playable those guns are. Now, the lore cinematic at the end was beautiful and gave us some large brushstrokes explaining how the world full of loot but no people came to be. But it also further cemented a strange immersion issue that kept popping up for me over the course of the event. Character shooters have always struggled to immerse me because anytime I encounter another player playing the same character as me, I'm just like starkly reminded that I'm not actually the character. Open world PvP games like Marathon are the most immersive games to me because I'm usually able to convince myself that it's me out there exploring a world and interacting with it. But in Marathon, I'm not me. I'm Void. Throughout the event, every time they talked about characters, I hoped they would give me a better clarity about the whole biosynthetic shell thing. If Blackbird's not a person, but is more of like a humanoid mech that like I get to load myself into, then I can understand why I'm encountering other Blackbirds out there on a run. But in this cinematic, we only ever see one instance of each of the runners, with Void, Blackbird, and Locust being a team, and the real dagger for me was when Glitch shows up with a team that, instead of having copies of Blackbird, Locust, or Void, is comprised of runners we don't recognize. This to me clearly cements the idea that each runner is a unique person. A unique person that we get to like embody, but that they are their own person, the same as Tracer in Overwatch or Phoenix in Valorant. But in Overwatch and Valorant, they're not open world games where a huge part of the pull for me is this sense of immersion, like this inserting of oneself into the world. I don't mind the characters there, but in Marathon, choosing to make this a character shooter does make the immersion much more difficult for me. The cinematic was also the only real reference we got to cosmetic customization, with this sequence showing Glitch sitting down presumably each time after a failed run with a very different look. This was surprising to me because Bungie has a pretty amazing track record of player customization, of like giving you like lots of options, and this seemed to allude that skins are probably going to be the primary character customization methodology. Skins are a lot less fun than modular customization, but given that it is characters, that are the character nature of the game, they do make sense, and at least the ones we saw, pretty dope. All the footage used in this video can be found in the links below, so be sure to go check out Dr. Lupo and the Marathon channel here on YouTube. What did you think about the launch event? What did you think about the character? Who was your favorite runner? Let me know down below in the comments. I'm WavePunk. I'll see you out there.